Anthony Davis, but he was the second best player on the championship team. When Luka wins the championship, by the way, he just led them to the finals last year. It's been all NBA 5 times. He's going to be the best player on the championship team. So to me, it seems like they didn't want to pay Luka.
The NBA has seen its fair share of shocking trades, franchise-altering moves that shake the foundation of the league. But this was different. When Luka Doncic was traded from the Dallas Mavericks to the Los Angeles Lakers, it didn't just stun the basketball world. It rewrote the script on what we thought was possible. One of the most skilled, decorated, and beloved young stars in the game was sent packing in a move that still doesn't make sense to most. Weeks have passed, but the shock hasn't fully worn off. If anything, it's only fueled more debate. At first, the conversation revolved around why Dallas would make such a drastic decision. Was it internal friction? A disagreement over Luka's role? Or was it something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface? Conspiracy theories ran wild. Was this really about basketball, or was it about business, power, and control? But as time passed, the conversation shifted.
I'm going to go with an easy one for me.
Yeah.
And this, hopefully this is non-controversial, but he was my teammate, and he's also one of the best players in the world. And to coach in the NBA, you need one of the best players in the world. It's Luka.
Now, it's not just about why Luka was traded. It's about how he was treated. The Mavericks front office didn't just move on from their franchise player. They seemingly went out of their way to justify it. In the weeks following the trade, reports surfaced about Luka's conditioning, his leadership, his attitude, as if the Mavericks were trying to convince the world that trading away a generational talent was somehow the right move. That didn't sit well with a lot of people. Former players, NBA legends, and even Luka's former teammates have come to his defense, pushing back against the criticism and calling out the Mavericks for how they handled the situation. The narrative is no longer about Luka being a problem. It's about how Dallas let go of a superstar and tried to rewrite history in the process. Today, we're diving into the biggest reactions from the players, analysts, and insiders who are standing up for Luka. From fiery callouts to blunt reality checks, the NBA world isn't just watching this trade unfold.
Just the excitement of being able to add a caliber player like that, a generational talent like that to our franchise, is something that's given me energy.
They're making sure Luka's name doesn't get dragged through the mud. Because love him or hate him, you can't deny greatness. If there's one thing about Matt Barnes, it's that he's never been one to hold back. A tough, no-nonsense competitor in his playing days, Barnes has carried that same energy into his media career. And when it came to Luka Doncic's trade, he had plenty to say. Barnes didn't just criticize the Mavericks front office, he went straight for the top. In a fiery podcast episode, he unleashed one of the most brutal callouts of any NBA owner in recent memory. Mr. Dion, take a step back, take a seat. You know nothing about hard work or what it takes to be great. You married into money. Sit with this trade that you made. Hopefully, Anthony Davis gets healthy, and I wish the Dallas Mavericks the best moving forward, but shut the hell up. Man, we all know how good Luka is. We don't give a damn what you have to say. Just sit back and be an owner. Barnes didn't just question the decision-making of Dallas's ownership. He flat out discredited them. He painted a picture of a clueless billionaire who inherited power without understanding what it actually takes to build a championship team. And let's be real, he's not alone in that sentiment. From the moment Luka was traded, fans, players, and analysts have been scratching their heads, trying to figure out how the Mavericks could justify moving on from a generational superstar at just 25 years old. But instead of taking accountability, the organization seemed more focused on spinning the narrative, throwing out whispers about Luka's conditioning and leadership as if they needed to defend their decision. That's exactly the kind of thing that pisses off former players like Barnes, because if there's one thing NBA vets hate, it's when front offices disrespect the greats. Luka didn't deserve to be traded. But even more than that, he didn't deserve to have his name dragged through the mud after it happened. And if the Mavericks thought they could just spin their way out of criticism, well, Matt Barnes just made sure that wasn't going to happen. When a trade this shocking goes down, there are usually two possible explanations: basketball reasons or something deeper. For Paul Pierce, this wasn't just a basketball move. This was ego at play. In a recent podcast episode, the Celtics legend didn't hold back his disbelief, calling out the Mavericks front office for turning their backs on their entire future. Man, it's just like it's some egos that got involved in all of this. Like, you traded the whole future, the whole face, the whole city was on his back, and you just said, "We don't need you." Like, seriously? This is one of the most unprecedented things I've ever seen. Like, where do they go if they don't make the playoffs? Because they made this trade thinking, like right now, Pierce is asking the real questions here. The Mavericks bet their entire franchise on this trade working out immediately. There was no backup plan, no rebuilding process, just an all-in move that now has zero guarantees. But why? That's where his theory gets interesting. He believes this wasn't just about basketball, it was about control. Someone in the Mavericks front office, or maybe even ownership, wanted to prove a point. Was Luka getting too much influence? Was there tension behind the scenes? Did the Mavericks just want to show they were in charge? Because let's be real, you don't trade away a player like Luka Doncic unless there's more going on behind the scenes. And now, if the Mavericks don't make the playoffs, this goes from questionable to catastrophic. And speaking of catastrophic decisions, Jalen Rose had something to say about the financial side of all this. Rose has seen a lot of bad trades in his time, but when he looked at this one, he saw something even worse, a franchise that wasn't willing to commit to greatness. In a televised discussion, Rose didn't hold back. To me, it seems like they didn't want to pay Luka. So, for me, if you don't want to pay Luka, then just sell the team. That's how I feel about it. Because if you ain't going to pay somebody with what he's accomplished already, I don't know where the money's going to go. Rose didn't just call out the trade itself. He questioned the entire direction of the Mavericks as a franchise. Because let's be honest, if you're not willing to pay for a once-in-a-generation player like Luka, what's the plan? This isn't some borderline all-star. This isn't a guy you have concerns about developing. This is Luka Doncic, one of the most dominant young players we've seen in decades. And yet, instead of building around him and securing their future, the Mavericks let him walk. And for what? To save money? To avoid a supermax contract? That's not just a bad move, that's a franchise failure. And this is where the conversation takes a turn, because Luka isn't just gone. He's motivated. If history has taught us anything, it's that the greatest players never forget. Michael Jordan had his "I took that personally" moments. Kobe Bryant had the Mamba mentality, turning every slight into fuel. LeBron James rewrote his legacy after the decision. And Luka? We're about to witness his version of that story. This trade isn't the end of Luka Doncic's greatness, it's the beginning of his revenge tour. And the Mavericks? They just handed him every reason to make sure the NBA never forgets their mistake. The debate will rage on for years. Was this the right move? Did the Mavericks just throw away a dynasty? Will Luka take his game to a level we've never seen before? Only time will tell. But one thing is for sure, this trade will never be forgotten. And neither will Luka Doncic.